It was an entire offseason of the Reds front office doing things differently. They can continue that trend by giving Matt McClain a contract right now.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, and we're glad that you're alongside us here today. My name is Jeff. His name is Steve, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. We've been podcasting about this team now for a combined 16 seasons, and we're glad that you're alongside us because we have a lot of spring training stuff and what you should be looking for in each and every game early on in spring training coming up later on in the show. In just a few minutes, Hunter Greene did add a new pitch. I was talking about the other day that we weren't hearing about things like that, and Hunter Greene said, "Oh, no, but I did." And I'm really happy about it, too. Could it be the thing that unlocks the Cy Young candidacy this year? We'll discuss that in a few minutes, but we will begin with Matt McLain, and a guy that we've talked about quite a lot as being the linchpin of this team in 2026 and its aspirations to go for the division, to go for more playoff wins, to maybe win a playoff series. He is an important part, maybe the most important part of that. But most importantly, he's got to get going. He's got to bounce back. He's got to break out, whatever you want to call it, from what happened last year. And at least early on in spring training, making hard contact, he's looking pretty good at the plate, looking comfortable. And those were the kind of earmarks that Terry Francona and even Matt McLain himself had set for himself in spring training, where he's just like, I just want to feel good going into opening day. So with all that being said, there's got to be a point this year where the Reds talk about a contract extension with Matt McClain, because at some point they got to lock somebody else down from this core, because right now Hunter Greene's the only one.
Yeah, actually, the time is now. If you're going to get Matt McClain to sign a contract, you can't wait for him to put up another 4-WAR season, because if he puts up that 4-WAR season, you're probably not going to be able to afford the contract extension. The way this will work for the Reds, Jeff, is if they lean in and take a big swing and take a big gamble. And it is going to be a gamble. You have to ask yourself, do you believe that Matt McClain is more the 3.6 WAR guy he was in 2023? Or the 0 WAR guy that he was in 2025. I do not believe that he is a 0 WAR guy. I'm much more likely that he is going to be 3 to 4 WAR. Offer him that contract now. And what that equates to for numbers. In 2023, Jeff, he was 127 in OPS plus, 27% better than league average, that rookie campaign. Last season, with the shoulder injury and trying to find his swing again, coming off of being out of baseball for a year, his OPS plus was 74. So 26% below league average. That is not who Matt McClain is. And we started to see him turn a corner as the season went on. There were some times he started to get hot and I think press a little bit. And those cumulative stats, those stats that take the whole season into the account, just could never really recover for what he was doing during the course of the season. But the eye test right now says he's feeling pretty good. And his early at-bats have looked like he's feeling pretty good, and he has found his swing a little bit. So if I were the Reds, if I was Nick Krall, I would have already made a pitch. Now, maybe they did, and we haven't heard about it yet, but I truly feel like you can't wait. You can't wait for Matt McClain to have that rebound year in 2026 and then be like, well, let's talk about keeping you around here, son. That's not going to get it done. It needs to be right now.
He'll be priced out of the Reds range, and they won't be able to get him locked up. And I think that, there's probably, you're probably thinking, Jeff, Steve, it's been one spring training game and Matt McClain faced Randy Dobnak and Ryan Lutos, two guys that I don't think are going to make anybody's roster, let alone the Seattle Mariners. So what are we really talking about here? This is far more than just this one spring training game. It's all the things that we heard at Reds Fest. It's things that we're hearing out of camp. There's lots of reports that he is just looking really, really good. But it's also like some of the things that he's been talking about. One of the things that really struck me was he had an interview with Charlie Goldsmith where he talked a lot about last year and his mentality all throughout the year. He said, baseball players have two mentalities. The one mentality is the one that you want. You want to be in the space where you're just like, I want to do whatever I can to help our team win the ball game. Period. Full stop. He said the mental state that I was in was the mechanical state, the state that all players go through at some point, but they don't want to be in because they're focused about, well, if I hold the bat up, maybe just a little bit, or maybe if I, tweak my elbow down just a little bit, things like that. And when you get stuck in that mode, it's really hard to get out. And we could see it all throughout the season. There were points, like we've talked about before. The month of June was the Matt McClain that we expect. Dude was slugging over 500, hitting over 300. I would say, I'd say probably a 280 hitter is what I expect from him in a full season, but he was hitting the cover off the ball. And then other months, he looked like he was still lost because it was constantly like, okay, well, for a minute, I found it. And then I lost it again. Now I gotta keep looking. And so he was just stuck in this mental mindset that players don't want to be in. He says that he's in a much better mental space right now, where he wants to be and where the team needs him to be.
Yeah, the projections for 2026 don't love him, and I think they're sleeping on him a little bit. Just looking at his Baseball Reference projection for 2026, Jeff, they're projecting him a slash line of 246, 320, 400. I think he's going to slug more than 400. 320, 330 on base, okay, but I think that 246 batting average is a little bit low as well. I think you're right. I think he'll hit for a little bit higher batting average than that. You look at, and by the way, offer him a contract. Now he's slugging 1,000 right now in spring training.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he's clearly going to maintain that. That's going to hold up. I just can't imagine that it doesn't. But look, I mean, the other reason to do this is he is clearly being looked at as a leader of this team. He is clearly being looked at by his peers as one of the guys you look at on this roster. How much did we hear at Reds Fest from the other guys on this team about Matt McClain and his involvement, his importance, and just the camaraderie that they all have with him? And these were unprompted questions also that these players were answering at Reds Fest. It wasn't, tell us a little bit about Matt McClain. It was, who's the guy that helps keep you loose, or who's the guy that is involved in and it was always Matt McClain being the answer. So I feel like I said this at the time to you, and I think when we did the show right after Reds Fest, I can envision a world where he's the next guy to wear that captaincy on his chest if they're going to keep him around here a little bit. Yeah, you gotta, the
mirror effect. Yeah, got me
for the video, folks. Jeff's a little confused.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what to do with his hands, but that happens from time to time. But no, I really could see Matt McClain being, that captain, being that guy. And that's not that he's the be all end all leader. There were aspects of leadership that Barry Larkin never really leaned into when he was wearing that C, but he was clearly the captain of that team. And I think Matt McClain could very much be in that same lane.
And I think that this contract, the other part about this is when you talk about signing a player long-term, we're not telling you that we think the Reds should go give him a 10-year, $350 million deal. Nothing crazy like that. I'm thinking it could be like a 6-year deal. And I don't necessarily know like the AAV, but like years-wise, you could buy out 2 years of free agency. He would still hit free agency kind of like on the other side of the peak of his prime. So this would still open up the opportunity for him to go make plenty of money through free agency. But at the same time, you still get him for much of his prime, as opposed to where he is right now. His timeline is he is a free agent after the 2029 season. So if you give him 6 years, he'd be a free agent after the 2031 season. And I feel like you would really solidify a key spot in your lineup for a long time.
So you're looking for something pretty close to the Hunter Greene deal, kind of the same setup that
right
what
there,
the Reds did Hunter Greene.
Yeah. Because I mean,
right.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
All right. Well, speaking of Hunter Greene, Jeff, as is the way around here, you said something and Hunter Greene said, wait a second, because we talked about that the big four in the Red starting rotation really haven't leaned into learning new pitches or adding new things to their arsenal. And we talked about that, and we clicked the word submit to the websites to post, and Hunter Greene said, ha, guess what? I'm adding a new pitch. We're going to talk about that coming up next. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute that I'll be talking to you today, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Reds. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Thanks for making Locked On Reds your first listen each and every day, and for helping to make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in all the land. You already live your team every single day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Reds with no interruptions. You're going to get access to a members-only Discord server with not just us talking Reds baseball, but every single host from every single Locked On show talking ball all the time over on Discord. You're going to get access to that and so much more. It's just $5 a month, $50 a year. If you would like to get started, go to lockedonreds.supercast.com. That link is also down in the show description. Join the Everydayer Club today. Okay, Jeff, Hunter Greene came out and said, you're wrong, Jeff Carr. I do have a new pitch. Hunter is adding a two-seam fastball, and, this can't hurt. Of the pitches he could add, this makes sense. It's just going to be one more different look to give hitters. I love that Hunter's still focused on kind of trying to evolve his game and is not operating from a place where he feels like he's arrived and he's just got to just keep doing what he's doing. He's still trying to improve, still trying to get better.
I think this is intriguing because last year when you watched him, I felt like at times he had a two-seamer because you could watch his four-seamer, it would kind of rise a little bit. And then there'd be some times where where a different fastball, it would show up as a four-seamer on like StatCast or something like that, but it would have just a slightly different break plane. Wouldn't quite rise, it would kind of run, arm side run where, since he's a righty, it would run into right-handers or run away from left-handers. So I kind of wonder if he was starting to implement this last year, but didn't quite have the full grasp of it and just firmly committed to it this offseason. But you're right. We were talking about the other day, it was just like, this top four is so talented, they don't need new pitches. And Hunter Greene's like, excuse me, I do. I have a new pitch. And he's really confident in it too, because all of the interviews that are coming out of Goodyear, I know that Charlie had a exclusive conversation with him where he was talking about the two-seamer, and he said that he's really confident about it and he's really excited to unveil it. So this feels like something he might throw a little bit more than the split finger that we saw last year. Because you remember that was kind of the big thing around him as far as like, his stuff was concerned, is that he was going to throw a split finger last year. He did throw it about 10% of the time, just a little bit over, at least according to Baseball Savant. So it was slightly above a show me pitch where I think hitters had to account for it a little bit, but he was still far and away a fastball slider pitcher. And so for me, I think that this will be a key, because I feel like we've seen a lot of guys, and not just on the Reds, but, on other teams where they have differing fastballs. They have a four-seamer, they have a cutter, they have a sinker, they have, whatever different kinds of fastballs you can throw. And even though the velocities aren't that different, with the break planes being different, it really offers a lot of different looks for opposing hitters to continually stay confused in the box. And that is going to be so key for Hunter whenever he's ready to rear back and, dial it up to triple digits and get a guy swinging.
I'm really excited about what the potential for Hunter Greene in 2026 is. I mean, you look at when he was in there in 2025, and I know availability, and we've had those shows and we've done those shows, and I see you guys in the comments. I know availability, But when he was available, my God, the last 2 years, Jeff, a combined 45 starts in the last 2 seasons with a 2.755 ERA in those starts, strikeouts per 9 at 11, walks per 9 at less than 2.2 last season. And you're going to add another pitch and improve upon that. He has had a really good stretch of baseball the last 2 seasons. And while I understand it was frustrating that he was only in 19 ball games last year, my God, he was so good when he was in those 19 ball games. I mean, Cy Young conversation is how you tease this. 2 years ago, he was 8th in Cy Young voting. And I think that was also an availability issue that kind of kept down his numbers.
26 starts.
If he remains healthy and gets to that same 26, 27 starts, you're right. He could definitely be in the Cy Young conversation, because that would be 3 years in a row of amazing numbers that I think you just simply could not ignore if he's able to string together a healthy season.
I feel like we underrate Hunter Greene, and maybe not you and me, but like Reds country as a whole, because we continually hammer that point. The availability is the best ability. Availability is the best ability. And we've just repeated it so much that because of that one talking point, we have decided that Hunter Greene is just okay. And I think if you were to put him apples to apples with every other pitcher in the history of the Reds, and you say, let's take health out of it. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's ready to go, because early on in a certain former Reds ace's career, who had an amazing, nice little turn on the mound and a fun delivery with a bunch of different fastballs and Johnny Cueto, we would have said availability is the best ability. That's the reason he didn't get the contract and Homer Bailey did. Like, if you take that out of the equation, where does Hunter Greene rank? Because I defy anybody to say that he's not in the top 5. He's easily in the top 5. You could argue that he's in the top 3. It's funny to me, because I feel like this dude is constantly having to stretch for respect just within his own fan base. And I think this is the year that he puts everybody like in the same category of, we all love Hunter Greene. Because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are either lukewarm on him or maybe even slightly negative toward Hunter Greene.
Well, you just described the Reds front office, because they have the same track record with Hunter that you just described from the fan base. And I know it's got to Hunter at times, and when he called out people being in the stands, and when he has said things that have kind of made you go, wait a minute, what now? And then the things we've heard from the Reds front office, not really on the record, but it kind of got there with the trade talk this offseason. But just the clamoring in the background for the last 3 seasons from folks within the front office about Hunter Greene and his availability and his dedication. I mean, let's just really call it what it is, his dedication and wanting to pitch. I think maybe the Reds as an organization have turned a corner on that. Hunter Greene has turned a corner on who he is. I think there was a long time there where I think that everybody put unreasonable expectations on Hunter. We've talked about that in the past, but I think he's finally realized those expectations of where everybody wants him to be. Jeff, if he pitches 26, 27 games in 2026, I mean, we're probably talking about a 7 to 8 WAR season out of Hunter Greene. I mean, you look at his numbers, those 2024 numbers equated, and that was 26 starts. Those equated to a 6.2 WAR, according to Baseball Reference. So he's in store for a big season. A 7 to 8 WAR season, that's absolutely a Cy Young conversation season.
And even just last year, he only had 19 starts, and he still had 4.4 WAR. Like, the fact that you can amass the same amount of WAR that Nick Lodolo, I mean, it was right there around Nick Lodolo, and Nick Lodolo had 10 more starts than he did. And Andrew Abbott had Nick Lodolo had 9 more starts, 1 relief appearance. And then Andrew Abbott had 10 more starts.
The top three were the top three. Andrew Abbott at 5.6, Lodolo at 4.9, and Hunter at 4.4. And we know that the top 2 guys were the top 2 in games started for the starting pitchers, and Hunter hung right there with them.
And WAR is an accumulative stat. So the more that you play, the more that you get. And the fact that if we said you add 10 more starts, just repeating the performances that he had last year, he would have easily been in the 6 WAR, 7 WAR conversation and easily been in the Cy Young conversation. So I think we've got to understand we're dealing with an amazing pitcher in Hunter Greene. And this two-seamer, I think, is just going to add to that legacy. He's going to have a heck of a 2026, and I cannot wait to see him just standing on top of all the haters this year and waiting for somebody to come up with something else negative against him, because he's going to make that really, really hard in 2026. But I know this, Steve, as we're watching these early games, and Andrew Abbott is due to pitch here on Tuesday afternoon as the Reds get set for their third spring training game of the season, folks are like, okay, what is it that we should be looking for here? Because obviously stats don't matter. Wins and losses don't matter. So what is the point of all of this? Coming up next, I'm going to tell you why it's easier than you think. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcast app. We're on all of them, including the ad-free feed that you get on the Locked On Reds Everydayer Club. Go to lockedonreds.supercast.com to learn more about that today. All right, Steve, when it comes to these early spring training games, you know, there's the fun graphic that's going around. There's a bunch of people that are just like, Elly De La Cruz is batting 1,000 and his OPS is over 3,000 right now. Well, it's because he's had 3 at bats. So obviously you're going to have some crazy stats when you go 3 for 3. But at the same time, like, how do you decipher performances in early spring training? I've gotten this question a couple of different times now. And I thought that this was a fun conversation because I think that it's a lot easier than people make it out to be. Early spring training games are some of my favorite games to watch because there is no stress. The wins and losses don't matter. The scores don't matter. The stats don't matter. You're looking for how guys approach these games, how comfortable they look, whether it be on the mound or in the batter's box, and how they recover afterward. Like, are we hearing, oh, you know, so-and-so's sore or so-and-so's dealing with an injury already or something like that? Thankfully, up until this point, knock on wood, fingers crossed, haven't heard anything like that. And we've seen a lot of guys look really comfortable with hard contact, great stuff on the mound, just pounding the strike zone. A lot of good things early on from the eye test. That's really what comes into play early on in spring training.
Yeah, spring training is an interesting beast because there's a movement a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember this or not, but a movement afoot about the length of spring training and guys saying, oh, it's too long. We don't need this much time. The problem is the pitchers do. The pitchers really do need this much time. And that's really what I watch in spring training because the hitters are going to get their work in and they're going to go on the backfields and they're going to get their swings down. They're going to get their timing down and they're going to get ready to go for opening day. And they can do that in a few weeks and they can do that without really the necessity of playing 30 spring training games. The pitchers can't do that. They need to be able to face real hitting. They need game situations. They need to work on pitches against guys that can show them and expose them if that pitch is not very good. They need these games. So I focus in much more on the pitching during spring training. And a lot of the same stuff you're talking about. Do they look comfortable? Do they look comfortable on the mound, right? Do they look good out there? Do they look like they're laboring? Do they look like there's something wrong? The pitches. We see pitchers in spring training, they don't throw the way they throw in the regular season. And what I mean by that is, you know, there's not the strategy of, okay, I'm going to set him up here to throw the breaking ball over here to get him to swing at a junk pitch over there. They don't do that. They're out there working on a pitch. You'll see an at bat where a pitcher goes and just throws nothing but the breaking ball because he's working on the breaking ball. He wants to see how it plays against this guy, and he's just going to keep dealing it to him. Hit it if you can. Those are the kind of things you see in spring training. And then, of course, you hit on the big key, which is for the pitchers, how do they feel the next day? We'll get to a point in spring where we see some relievers throw on back-to-back days. They don't do that a lot, but we will see it towards the end of spring training. We will hear every day when a guy pitches, the next day he's going to come in and all of the media are going to be right there. How you feeling? What's going on? Tell me about your arm. What do you think? How was yesterday? And you're going to start to hear about that recovery. You're going to start to hear about how it is that their arm truly feels. And you're going to see it in how they go about their business the rest of the week and how they go in between starts. So those are the things you watch. And it's frustrating that these games aren't all on TV like they should be because you can get a good feel for what you're seeing. And, and Tommy Thrall and the Cowboy and those guys do a good job of describing what's happening out there, but you're not getting all that with the eye test of being able to see how a guy feels on the mound, being able to see how a guy's doing in the batter's box. Tommy can describe things, but he can't describe it that in detail so that you get a picture of how guys feel and how they're recovering. So I wish these games were on TV. It's 2026. Major League Baseball needs to pull its head out. Well, you get the idea. They've got camera feeds. Just stream it. Just stream it. There's a camera behind home plate. You know how I know? Because they're posting highlights on team pages from the game of the camera angle behind home plate. Just stream that. You don't got to hire guys. You don't need extra cameras. You don't need the announcers. Just stream that camera shot.
Stream that feed, have the radio broadcast. That's all I need. I mean, I think it's intriguing too. Like, to your point about the pitchers and their stuff and it's different and all that. On Saturday in the first spring training game, when we saw Chase Burns, we know what Chase Burns can do. Last year, dude absolutely ran that fastball up there on the velo. I don't know that it topped 98 miles an hour on Saturday, but I know that last year it topped triple digits quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's part of this. Like, guys are ramping up their velocity. But the other part of this, too, is that Chase Burns on Saturday, at least according to Baseball Savant, threw 22% of his pitches as changeups. He's working on that pitch. He's trying to make that part of his arsenal. Chase Burns is a four-seam slider kind of pitcher, because we know that both of those pitches are plus offerings that can just absolutely confound hitters at the plate. He wants to add that changeup to his arsenal and get comfortable with it. That's why he threw it he threw it more than his slider, more than any other pitch other than his fastball, because he's just trying to make sure that he adds that to his. So that's just a little bit of an example of how guys approach spring training from the mound. And I remember talking with Bronson Arroyo about this too. Bronson Arroyo was a proponent not of the idea of shortening spring training, but of lengthening. He said, I'd have been happy if it was double. He's like, I love spring training because I felt really good throughout spring training. You really work yourself up for the season and get yourself ready to go. And as a pitcher, you want more time to do that, because think about this from our perspective as fans. We're like, geez, 32 of these games. Here we go. All right, let's watch these spring training games. From the pitcher standpoint, they're like, I get to pitch once every 5 days and there's only 32 of these things. Like, I got to get going, man. Like, the season's coming up, and we are very close to opening day. But at the same time, these guys don't have a ton of time to get themselves ramped up to where they want to be. And remember, last year, Tito came in and said, I want our guys ready to throw 100 pitches by opening day. I got to believe that it came back into this spring training saying the same thing, but we're not reporting that because, quite frankly, that would just be, copy paste from last year. But that's got to be their philosophy going into this spring training as well. So we're going to continue to see those guys ramp up. So I think it's clear that early on.
David Bell ran spring training with the idea that the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season, the pitchers were still in spring training. Basically, they were still building. They were still trying. They were still doing. Tito comes from a very different school of thought, which is, no, you're ready to go on opening day, and all of you need to be ready to go on opening day. And I think I like that one better. I
agree.
I agree. They have to spin things up a little bit faster, but I like the idea of knowing that, especially with this starting rotation, that those guys are going to be able to go out there and throw 100 pitches and give you 6-7 innings of work when I knew you were going to do that. When the season starts from jump, because I got pretty tired of everybody treating March and April in the city of Cincinnati like these games don't matter. The games that matter come in September. No, those wins count just as much. And I don't think they took them serious enough under the old regime. And I like that it's a little more serious now.
Yeah, I think David Bell thought opening day was on May 1st, but I don't. I'm glad that Terry Francona realizes opening day is opening day, and you don't punt a whole month of the season. But I am looking forward to today's game. I haven't seen the lineup just yet. I don't think it's been out as we record today's show, but we will be all over that here on Locked On Reds. And have a show for you after the game and tomorrow and all that great stuff, because we're covering you every single day talking about the Cincinnati Reds. So make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Become an everydayer. And if you're an everydayer, take it up a notch and go ad free with the Everydayer Club. Link in the description, or just go to lockedonreds.supercast.com to learn more about that. And make sure you check out our following episodes, because we've got the Reds covered every single day. If you're watching on the video feed, please hang on, because we've got a 24/7 streaming feed for all of Locked On, all the biggest stories in sports covered by the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Or if you're listening, make sure you go check out Sully over on Locked On MLB and Brett and Mike Stanton over on Back to the Bullpen on the Locked On MLB feed as well, looking at the league every single day, because we are all on the Locked On Podcast Network. But as for Steve and myself, you know that we will be Locked On Reds every single day. I think I'm going with Bulbasaur on Friday.
Are we doing this again? Jesus.
I mean, Hannah's going to get Leaf Green. I got Fire Red, so we'll be able to trade.
It amazes me that you were able to find someone to marry you.